Meanwhile, the Democratic Speaker has said that Senate leadership has signaled it is ready to receive the article of impeachment against Donald Trump, which charges the former president with incitement of insurrection. Nancy Pelosi has just concluded her weekly press conference, and she provided no further clarity on when a Senate impeachment trial might begin. This, of course, follows the historic inauguration of President Joe Biden and his Deputy Karmarla Harris. What does the future look like? We're joined now by Elizabeth Sidiropoulos, Chief Executive of the South African Institute of International Affairs, to talk to us about this. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us, Elizabeth. So let's just first start with that issue of impeachment and how important it is. It seems that some people are going back and forth on whether or not Donald Trump should be held responsible for it. Should this be the first order of business? As in, is it something that will take the monkey off President Joe Biden's back, so to speak?
Well, I think President Biden has indicated even before the inauguration that, he wouldn't want the impeachment to stymie his efforts at getting his cabinet approved and actually moving forward with a very important set of priorities within Congress, specifically, of course, related to dealing with COVID and the economy. But he also made it clear that this was a decision of Congress. I think there is a case to be made for incitement. I mean, we all saw the images in the lead up to the storming of the Capitol. This was not something that happened behind the scenes, and certainly the case must be made. Now, we know that all of these cases are highly political. Impeachment is a political process, but what I think the Democrats, the approach that Democrats have taken is that it is important to make the point about accountability, that the president cannot simply be saying what he's saying and get away with it with the events that happened thereafter. I think it will be difficult to impeach him, though, because they need 17 Republicans to switch to vote in favor.
Let's look at his cabinet, Elizabeth. Chuck Schumer, the leader of the Democrats, has said, of course, they are doing what they can to move along as quickly as possible. The appointment of his cabinet and national security teams seems to be top of priority. Why is that in particular?
Well, maybe in another time it would have been because of the external threat. I think that is still a big concern, and certainly where you have had cases of Russian interference in elections, the concerns around that and so on, and China is a great geopolitical rival. But I think that's now, there is an added dimension to that after January the 6th, and that is really the domestic terrorism threat. And what we saw had to be rolled out for the inauguration to be safe, not just from a health perspective, but also from a security perspective, with all of those National Guards, Secret Service guys being deployed around the Capitol. So there's a very real concern. You want to get those in place because you don't want anybody to take advantage of the fact that there are people in acting capacities in any of these agencies.
Some pundits have said in the last couple of days, former President Donald Trump has done as best as possible what he could to upset the international community, whom Joe Biden, as president, would have to deal with. What are your thoughts on that? And I say this against some of the things that he has already started doing, the executive orders. Is it to allay those afraid temperatures? One of the things, for instance, he said is that he wants to remove the word alien from the immigration laws in the U.S. Is that something that is going to make people feel like this is definitely a new era? And if there were a threat, they'd be thinking twice about it.
I think Biden has made it very clear that he wants to show that this is now, we're turning a new page over a page. We're in fact turning over a new chapter. And I think the number of executive orders signed over the last 24 hours prove that point, particularly on the issues of immigration. Some of the most egregious policy decisions that had been made under the Trump administration. These are, what he will roll back through executive order. What he cannot and has to go through an immigration bill, that is already in motion to go through Congress. Clearly, some of the issues around immigration are going to be very difficult. There are other initiatives and policy decisions that were really made in the last couple of weeks of this administration, which certainly, the Biden administration can roll back, but it puts them in a very difficult spot, whether it is on looking at what the sanctions imposed, additional sanctions imposed against Iran, whether it is the decision on Taiwan to allow greater engagement with the Taiwanese administration, whether it is in our own context in the African continent, the decision to recognize Moroccan sovereignty over Western Sahara in return for normalization of relations with Israel. All of the Houthis as a terrorist group, all of these make the diplomatic landscape a little bit more complicated for the Biden administration.
So let's do that, Elizabeth, and throw into the cauldron the polar opposite relationships that the United States has had with China and Russia, for instance. So there is talk that President Biden will be looking to extend the arms control treaty with Russia, the START treaty. The importance of extending it for a short period of time, or 5 years, as some have said. What is the significance of that?
Well, I think what you ideally would want is a process that actually takes you beyond the short term on such a critical issue as arms control. These are treaties. There's a whole group of arms control arrangements which, under the previous administration, have just been allowed to disappear. And I think the importance here is to be able to actually provide some predictability and a rules-based framework around that. The challenge here is that, we have a short period of time before the current one expires, and the administration has just come in, and you don't have any confirmed cabinet appointments in this regard. So it does make it very difficult, and certainly in the short term, one would want to at least have something in place. But clearly the bigger objective and the more sustainable goal is to actually arrive at a more long-lasting agreement.
A final one, Elizabeth. Interesting, obviously, today I believe Joe Biden has taken hold of the purchase account. And one of the biggest threats to his presidency is, of course, COVID-19, and how he handles it has been clear is what stands between him and winning over Trump supporters and those who already support him. He's already spoken about masks. The economy, we know, is top of the list. But in simple languages, if you're going to use communications responsibly amidst COVID-19, with the vaccination going on and the challenges, what would be some of the first things he should be saying on that account, for instance?
Sorry, I didn't hear that, Tsipisa. Sorry, could you repeat that?
He has taken hold of the purchase account for the first time. So in line with COVID-19, the challenges and what he's already announced, what would be some of the first things that he should be saying to encourage even those who are his detractors?
Well, I mean, in terms of dealing with COVID and the economy, because I think he has tried to deal with both of those simultaneously in the proposal that is before Congress, the $1.9 trillion relief package. The idea is really to be able to speed up the deployment of vaccinations, to provide key support to local governments and states to help them deal with their budget deficits as a result of COVID, and therefore to help them deliver vaccines. It is also about, and one of the plans on the table is to be able to provide money to actually increase the number of community centres that are providing vaccinations. So he's doing all of that, and he's doing as much as he can as a federal government, and then providing support to the states. That's one dimension of it. The other dimension of it, of course, and that is something that he's going to have to put his best bipartisan hat on and work his relations with the senators to get it past the Senate, is, of course, the increased unemployment benefits, childcare benefits, that are all intended to help the ordinary man and woman in the street as a result of the COVID pandemic, as a result of the rising unemployment. That, though, has to go, and the provision, of course, of the top-up from the $600 given to everybody, take that up to $2,000, so an additional $1,400 to the public, which was part of the debate during the Trump administration. These are all going to be his immediate focus over the next few days and weeks.
And of course, we will be monitoring that account to see if that messaging coincides with some of those things that you say should be top priority for him. Thank you very much, Elizabeth Sidiropoulos, Chief Executive of the South African Institute of International Affairs.